We are the Imperial Guard. It is time we started acting like it.
Deep in the nightmare world of the 41st millennium, there is only war.
In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. This is the essence of one of fiction's most expansive and influential universes, Warhammer 40K. It is a galaxy where stagnant human civilizations struggle to survive. It clings to existence within a decaying empire of a million worlds. This empire is constantly besieged by aliens, mutants, and supernatural creatures from a psychic hellscape. The setting is so bleak and brutal that it's become the work of its own genre, Grimdark, a vision of the future where hope is the first casualty and progress is a concept. For over 4 decades, millions have embraced this darkness, collecting model armies, meticulously painting tiny soldiers, rolling dice in tabletop battles, and devouring hundreds of novels set in this universe. So what exactly is 40K? At its core, it's a miniature wargame that combines strategy with rich storytelling. Players assemble and paint miniature figures representing various factions and battle it out on tabletop terrains. Beyond the game, it's a hobby that encompasses model building, painting, and participation in community events. For the community of fans, it offers a shared universe for creativity and camaraderie, and even solace can be found within its depiction of endless conflict. But 40K didn't emerge from a vacuum. It's been inspired by the cornerstones of science fiction and fantasy. Its most direct ancestor is its fantasy counterpart. The initial concept for the 41st millennium was straightforward Warhammer fantasy in space. This led to a direct translation of fantasy races like orcs and Eldar, space elves, into a science fiction setting. Familiar tropes remained, but magic was reimagined as psychic powers and demons. Beyond fantasy roots, Frank Herbert's Dune was the biggest literary influence. Concepts were lifted entirely from the pages of Dune, including the idea of a vast, stagnant feudal empire ruled by a godlike emperor who is indispensable for interstellar travel. In 40K, navigators are mutated humans who guide starships through the dangerous warp. The warp allows faster than light travel across the galaxy. This idea mirrors Dune's guild navigators who use their abilities to navigate space. Both universes also share a fear of artificial intelligence. In the Imperium, this fear has led to a ban on AI. This is similar to the Butlerian Jihad in Dune, where intelligent machines are also forbidden due to fears of rebellion. The concept of chaos owes a tremendous debt to Michael Moorcock's Elric saga, which has been on my own reading list for a very long time. From what I've researched, Moorcock's dark fantasy stories strongly influenced the Ruinous Powers. This influence appears in the iconic 8-pointed star, gods representing primal forces, and the corruption of mortal champions. These all trace back to Moorcock's work. And finally, no fantasy-adjacent creation can escape the long shadow of Tolkien. While a more direct influence on Warhammer fantasy, the Lord of the Rings provided the archetypes for many of 40K's alien races. The orcs are a direct science fiction interpretation of Tolkien's orcs, and the Eldari are heavily based on his elves. Besides borrowing sci-fi and fantasy tropes, 40K's original DNA is deeply influenced by the satirical and violent 2000 AD anthology. 2000 AD is a British comic known for a dark humour and social commentary. Judge Dredd inspired the Adeptus Arbites, the galaxy's law enforcers. The Arbites maintain order and justice across the Imperium of Man's planets. The sprawling, overpopulated and crime-ridden high worlds of the 41st millennium also owe a great deal to Dredd's metropolis. The idea of gangs, mutants and roving bands can all be traced back to 2000 AD. What 40K though has done is expand its universe. It started as a campy, grim, dark and heavily satirical world. Now it's a vast, almost unknowable universe that pulls in the best ideas from its inspirations. 40K creates characters and stories that resonate with people, whether it's easy to read action of bolter porn or the mind-bending fights and dialogue of the heresy books. My own personal favourite is the fun and light, sharp-inspired Gaunt's Ghost series or the Caiaphas Cain series. There truly is something for everyone, but all of these stories share one unifying truth. that the Emperor protects, and he is the carrion lord of the Imperium. Most beginnings were accidental. Games Workshop, reacting to Dungeons & Dragons, formed Citadel Miniatures to supply models for D&D. In 1983, Games Workshop faced some financial trouble. To recover, they launched Warhammer Fantasy, which sold out its first print run of 3,000 copies, losing their contract with Dungeons & Dragons, forcing them to create an entirely new intellectual property. Warhammer 40K, originally called Rogue Trader, began evolving over the next few years. At first, Warhammer 40K was conceived as a starship game. Later, it was developed as a sci-fi role-playing game. It quickly evolved into a hybrid RPG and skirmish game. The setting was weirder, more satirical and full of references. This tone laid the thematic groundwork for the Grimdark universe. Its tone was established from the very first page, with an iconic opening that has defined the franchise for decades. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods, and the master of a million worlds by the will of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is carrion lord of the Imperium, to whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed each day, and for whom blood is drunk and flesh is eaten. Human blood and human flesh, the stuff which the Imperium is made. To be a man in such times is to be one among untold billions. It is to live the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. This is the tale of these times. It is a universe that you can live today if you dare, for this is a dark and terrible era where you will find little comfort of hope. If you want to take part in the adventure, then prepare yourself now. Forget the power of technology, science, and common humanity. Forget the promises of progress and understanding, for there is no peace among the stars. Only an eternity of carnage and slaughter and the laughter of thirsting gods. But the chaos is a big place, and, whatever happens, you will not be missed. The core concept was space fantasy with a medieval attitude. An early article in White Dwarf magazine explained their aim was to create a society with a medieval mindset. Fear, suspicion, self-sacrifice, and acceptance of death would be common. Technology exists, but it's not central to everyday life. Most people see technology as witchcraft, including the people who fix and create the technology. The accidental origins I spoke of earlier really come down to its lore and expansion from the campy board game to the real Grimdark we know today. The most foundational events in 40k, the Horus Heresy, was not the product of some grand design, but a very practical problem. In 1988, designer Jervis Johnson was creating the game Adeptus Titanicus, which would feature giant war machines. The plan was for Imperial Titans to fight Eldar Titans. However, the company lacked the money and time to design and produce an entirely new line of Eldar Titan models. Needing a visually similar opponent for the Imperial Titans, Johnson and the team took a vague mentions of ancient rebellion from the Rogue Trader rulebook and expanded it. They invented the Heresy, a massive civil war that pitted the Imperial forces against their traitorous brethren. This solved a production issue, but it also accidentally created the single most important historical event in the 40k universe. In 1993, Warhammer 40k became the official name of the game, dropping the Rogue Trader elements and moved into miniature wargames. Over the next few years, we'd get lore snippets from Rogue Trader, White Dwarf, and army books. We see the launch of the Black Library, the publisher of Warhammer Fiction, and the release of the official lore as we know it today. At its core, 40k is a game where players enact battles using miniature models of warriors and fighting vehicles. However, to describe it as just a game is to sort of miss the point. For most fans, the game itself is only one part of a much larger, multifaceted hobby that allows for limitless creativity. It is a tangible, hands-on way to engage with the 41st millennium, transforming abstract lore into a physical army that is uniquely yours. The community often conceptualizes Warhammer through sort of 5 key aspects or pillars, allowing a newcomer to enter the franchise at a low cost, low commitment level, such as a video game or a novel, and then progress to more involved miniature hobby. First, you collect. It all begins with choosing a faction and collecting an army of the highly detailed miniatures. For many, the joy is in the hunt, in planning an army's composition, and in the simple pleasure of owning these awesome models. Newcomers are advised to start small, perhaps with a combat patrol box, which provides a balanced selection of miniatures to learn with, rather than being overwhelmed by a massive army from the start. Next you build. This is the technical stage. The models arrive in pieces on plastic frames or sprues, and assembling them is a craft in itself. It requires patience, precision, and specialised tools like clippers for removing parts, a knife for cleaning mould lines, and plastic glue to bond the pieces together. Then you paint. This is the creative soul of the hobby, where a piece of grey plastic is transformed into a unique character. From simple battle-ready colour schemes to competition-winning masterpieces, painting is where fans make their armies their own and express their artistic vision. It's meditative, it's relaxing, and allows for creativity and personalisation. Of course, you can also play. The game is a complex contest of strategy where players command their painted armies against one another on a tabletop battlefield, using dice and rulers to resolve combat. These battles create their own emergent narratives, making every game a unique story of triumph or defeat. It is also a fundamentally social activity, providing a great excuse to meet up with friends or connect with new people at local game stores. And then finally read, which is where I've sort of fallen in love with Warhammer itself, along with the models. The universe is fleshed out by hundreds and hundreds of novels and short stories, audio dramas, published by the Black Library. For many fans, this is their primary or even sole way of engaging with the setting. They dive deep into the stories of the heroes and villains that the miniatures represent, exploring the rich lore without ever picking up a paintbrush or rolling a die. And if players ever grow tired of the competitive game, they can focus on the creative act of painting. If they experience a creative block, they can immerse themselves in lore by reading a novel. This flexibility prevents the hobby from becoming monotonous and explains its staying power in the lives of fans, which often span decades. I personally have barely touched the tabletop game, despite owning thousands and thousands of points worth of game models. My first kit came, I think, in the year 2001, where I bought a tactical squad of Marines and went with the Space Wolves aesthetic. Being young and never having actually painted anything before, they turned out as white blue blobs, as I really had no idea about paint thinning or painting in general then. Between then and COVID, I slowly consumed more of the hobby by playing the absolute shit out of the Dawn of War RTS series and all its expansions, dipping my toes into the heresy books over many years and falling asleep to the knowledgeable tomes of the likes of Luton and Wolflord Bro. And finally, over lockdown, from much encouragement from my boss at the time, I bought Necrons, lots and lots of Necrons. I'm not sure if it's the touch of the tism or a need to have a complete army, but I kept collecting, and its current number I think sits around 9k points of Necrons alone. Many still unpainted, piling alongside Blood Angels, Eldar, Sisters of Battle, and Inquisition detachments, and some other kill teams. I then fell in love with the game with the lore, jumping into Guns Go series, which I highly recommend. And since I've consumed hundreds of books, codexes, short stories over the past 5 years, ultimately ending in me starting a YouTube channel, and now talking about it, which I suppose as a fan is the culmination of just wanting to share the hobby in my own way. That's the thing I think about Warhammer, that no matter which pillar or pillars you take part in, it's incredibly addictive. The term plastic crack is slang that sort of a lot of people will sort of talk about in the hobby. It sort of captures the addictive nature of collecting the miniatures. As someone who's obsessed with good stories, their library of interconnected lore would sort of keep me entertained for years if I consumed like nothing else. This raises sort of the central question, like why do people pour so much time, money, and lots of money and passion into such a bleak and brutal universe? The hobby provides control and creativity, at least in my opinion. The act of meticulously assembling and painting a miniature is meditative, mindful process that requires sort of patience and precision and focus. This allows individuals to disconnect from the stress of modern life, offering a tangible way to express yourself artistically and create something unique. In a sort of setting defined by destruction, like my own interaction is the act of sort of creation and consumption. This process has offered like such a nice, powerful sense of achievement. Like there's nothing better than like finishing off a model. There's nothing better than finishing off a tactical squad, like, or whatever race you may be painting. It's just really, really nice. And unlike many other popular franchises that resolve around sort of like a single hero's journey, 40k is the setting that it's not a singular linear story. There's no one main character. The narrative is a patchwork of countless tales of heroism, tragedy, horror, spread across 1,000,000 worlds and 10,000 years of history. The structure allows fans to find their own niche. One might not care for the galaxy-spanning politics, but fall in love with the story of a single Imperial Guard regiment fighting for its homeworld, or a lone Inquisitor hunting demons in the underbelly of a hive city. The vastness means the rabbit hole is endless, and every fan can make their own unique and personal connection to the lore. The lack of a central protagonist creates a narrative vacuum that the factions themselves fill. This transforms the act of choosing an army from a single gameplay decision into an act of identity formation. People will always joke about like an orc player or a Tau player, which adds them to their own unique sort of tribes. While painting can be a solitary act, the hobby is fundamentally social. It serves as a pretext to meet up with friends and roll dice and just have a bit of crack and laugh. Local game stores function as these sort of hubs where people can meet and learn and compete. And like everyone who will watch these videos, unknowingly or knowingly, will be part of like an online community that is really very supportive, fairly welcoming to newcomers, and the hobby sort of becomes like a common language that connects strangers. And I think there's one sort of final crucial layer to understanding 40k, that despite all the seriousness, its origins are in satire. Like when it was created in the 1980s, it was not meant to be taken seriously. It was a grotesque, over-the-top authoritarianism, religious fanaticism, unchecked militarism. The Imperium wasn't the hero of its story. It was explicitly designed as like the shittest place to be alive, the most bloody regime imaginable, and a sort of a warning about where humanity's worst impulses could lead. But obviously with like commercial growth and that sort of satirical edge has disappeared and softened to like appeal to a much more mainstream audience. Like the Space Marines, once depicted as brainwashed child soldiers, were increasingly marketed as noble, heroic defenders. This sort of commercialization has created a satire to sincerity pipeline, where the complex elements were de-emphasized in favor of a simpler sort of good guys versus bad guys narrative. The shift opened the door for a lot of interpretation by a fairly sizable chunk of the community. And perhaps this is the ultimate meaning of 40k, as a sort of satirical warning about humanity's worst impulses. It represents a future devoid of hope and defined by endless war. But through hobby, through active creation, and like the mastery of painting and just having fun like with people and the community, and fans find a way to just enjoy the hobby in sort of any way they see, and you know, they can pick one of those pillars, whether it's painting, lore, reading, you know, the game itself. Like, it's for everyone, and it's important, you know, to say that it's for everyone, and it's for everyone to enjoy. I just want to say thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my first mini essay, I guess. I'll probably do more of these in the future, and it was fun to sort of just research Games Workshop and hear about its origins and actually learn about its origins as well. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you did, and have a good day.